Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Bava Metzia daf Chaf Gimel. We're going to begin on Chaf Gimel with Alpha, about 8 lines from the top of Tashma. We were learning in yesterday's daf a machlokas between Rabbi and Rava whether makoim have a siman, whether the actual place that the item is found constitutes as a siman. So on this we continue with the Gemara. Tashma, kikar shel nachdom, har elu shelo. So when it comes to breads that are made by a baker, the din is you can keep it because they make so many of them and they all look the same. That's not a siman, and therefore if you find such an item, we don't know who it belongs to, and therefore you can keep it. Ha shel baal bayis chayv l'hachros. However, if let's say you find a baal bayis bread, in which of course is explicitly mentioned already in our Mishnah, as Rashi points out, you announce it. And the reason for that is because it's a siman, because a baal bayis makes it in an unusual way. So what do we see? So again, when it comes to baal bayis chayv l'hachros, so baal bayis my time, why? Kivan isbahu siman, since again this bread is unique, demeda yadia rifted the inish. Inishu. We know that when it comes to this bread, that you'll know whose it belongs to. Therefore, or potentially who it could belong to because it has a siman. Now, we don't make any distinctions between if this was found in Rishus Yachid, even in Rishus Rabbi. There's a lot of people walking around in the Rishus Rabbi. So in either situation, you have to announce it. Alma, siman hasulidaris havi siman tifta the Rabba. So this is another point that Rabba and Rabba discussed, which is when it comes to something which is in a particular place, specifically in Rosh Hashanah, where there's so many people that can easily trample upon it. The question is it a siman, or is it considered to be like it's already destroyed, and therefore it's not a siman? So apparently, this is of the opinion that it's a siman, because otherwise, why would you have to announce it? So it's a tifta the Rabba. The reason is because ein mavrin al oichin, says Rashi, hamoitzi oichin b'derech. Anyone who finds food on the road, in roshu lavraleim, you can't just pass it up. Hilchach lo nidrasu, it's not going to be trampled on. Shemi shemotzan rishon higbion. The first person who finds it will have picked it up. So you are the first person that picked it up, which means this is something that is not trampled on, because any person who would see food is obligated to pick it up, because ein mavrin al oichin. Mora says, okay, but nachrim aren't going to care, and they may end up trampling on it. No, nachrim chayshel kshafim. They're concerned of some witchcraft, and therefore, because of some sorcery, they're also not going to do anything, and they're going to stay away from it, basically. They're not going to trample upon it because they're scared maybe if they touch it with their beautiful feet, something may happen to them. So they're not going to ruin it. How about animals and dogs, right? They're not going to care about kshafim, so they'll step on it. No, but we're talking about in a place where animals are not frequented. So let's say again this machlokas Rab and Rab is a machlokas tanaim. So we find Rabbi Huda Aimer kol davar sheish bo shinoi chayv l'hachros. Anytime that there's something unusual about the item, even though on the surface looks like a regular item, you still have to announce it. Ketzad. So our Mishnah said, matzah eagle, let's say you have these dates, in which they themselves are regular, however, uvetochel cheres. Inside of it, unusually, is earthenware. Or kikar v'seichamois. Let's say you have bread and there's coins inside the bread. So therefore, that would be enough siman. So machlad the Tanakama savar hari elu shelo. Apparently, the fact that he mentions it must be it's machlokas. The Tanakama holds that even though there's cheres found inside of an eagle, or there's ma'ois found inside of a kikar, it doesn't make any difference. You still keep it. Now, savruah de kol yama siman habam elav havi siman. They probably all hold that when a siman that just can come by itself, says Rashi, haroy level be'elav can go in cheres. Pa'amim shenayfel be'eagle. In other words, it doesn't have to be that a person necessarily put it in there. It could have just fallen in. Not that this is the normal routine, but sometimes if you're cooking or you're doing these dates and there's earthenware around, it could have fallen inside. So according to the ones who say that even though it could have just happened anyway, it's a siman, says Rashi, the Amrinan Hashem simanos nusham, it was probably put there deliberately as a siman, enough elav, whatever sheish siman who, and therefore you have to announce him. Avrino oichlin, and people pass by foods, which means they could trample on it. So my love is siman hasilidaris kamifli. Mar saber lo havi siman or saber havi siman. So we see that maybe that's a group of the machlokas, whether or not you are chayv l'hachris when it comes to the scheres, you put it in. There was a siman, but it's possible it may have been trampled upon. So if taka the Tanakama hold that a siman which could be trampled upon is no longer a siman, that's the reason why you can keep it, and people are going to pass over it, and therefore they'll trample on it. So kikar shel bal bayis b'rishus rabbim my machros. Understand, if that's the case, then why in the rishus rabbim, if we're dealing with the breads of a bal bayis, why do you have to announce it? If he's holding that people are going to be potentially passing by this bread, and possibly therefore it's going to end up being trampled upon, is not a siman, so then why does it matter if it's the bread of a bal bayis? It's going to be trampled on and ruined. We hold that even though it can be trampled upon, the siman still remains. And sometimes people will pass by foods, which means there's a good chance it will be trampled upon. But the question is, if a siman such as this, like cheres into an eagle, is this something in which is considered a siman, that it was done deliberately, or we can say maybe it just happened to be that way and therefore it doesn't mean anything. That kind of comes savar siman abam elav lo havi siman, and therefore you keep it. Rabbi Huda savar havi siman, therefore you have to announce. Rabbi no, the kol yalma siman hasiladeris lo havi siman. Rabbi will tell you that according to everyone, a siman which can be trampled upon is nothing. People are not going to step on food because they're going to pick it up. Savar havi siman. Okay. Igadi Amri, some say no, that Savruda Kol Yama Siman Obama Elav havi siman. When it comes to a siman that just happens to be, possibly, it's still considered a siman. It's probably that the person put the cheres there on purpose, or the ma'ois in there on purpose. So siman hasuli daris will havi siman. People trample on food, it's not going to be recognizable as food anymore. So my love, the question just is, do people generally pass by food or not? Or do they pick it up? If they pick it up, then the siman will remain. So no. If you want to tell me that if it's trampled upon, it's not a siman, and again, people pass by food, so which means it's all trampled on. So again, as we saw before, what's the purpose of announcing it? It's going to be trampled on, ruined. There's no siman there. Really, even though people step on it, it's still a siman. Even though people step on it and people pass by. Again, whether or not having this piece of cheres is considered to be a siman, or maybe it just fell in there. Really, it's not a siman at all if it's trampled on. However, it's not going to get trampled on because people will not pass it up, they'll pick it up. The whole question is, when they pick it up and they discover cheres inside, is that considered to be a siman? Klola, the general rule, when it comes to a lost object, is the following. Once you hear the guy say, whoa, I lost something, I lost my money, I lost my object, I'm never going to get it back, that's miyayish limina. Once he says that language, it means he's given up hope. Furthermore, the halacha is that kikaris b'rishus harabim, bundles that are found in the rishus harabim, hari elu shelo. The din is you can keep them, because these krichos b'rishus harabim, hari elu shelo, as Rashi reminds us, because she'en bo siman. Rishus Yachid, but if it's in the Rishus Yachid, it depends. If it just happened to fall in Hariel Shalo, then you can keep it. If it's clear it was put down there deliberately, so that person was not miyayish, he did it, put it there, but he wants to get it back, so therefore you have to announce. However, whatever shein bo siman. Whatever sheish bo siman lo shno rishus yachid, lo shno rishus rav, lo shno rishus yachid, ben derech nafil, ben derech hanacha chayv hachros. When dealing with something with a siman, you always need to announce. It doesn't make any difference. And Rashi says that once the davar sheish bo siman, here's the chiddush, the point. Rabbi Taimed, Yomer siman haslidaris havi siman. Even if it's in rishus harabim, it doesn't make any difference. It's still chayv hachros, because the din is that when it comes to a siman haslidaris, it's still considered to be a siman, and therefore once it has a siman, you have to announce it, even in rishus harabim, even though people are mavirin al oichlin and they step on it, etc. Okay. Question TA9. It's a good one. Tanan Rabbi Yehuda Omer Kol Davar Sheish Bo Shinoi Chayv Hachros. Keitzad Metzia Yigav B'Soch Cheres. But my Kimiflagi 3. Kol Davar Sheish Bo Shinoi. Right. Chayv Hachros. So he said, for example, Metzia Eagle, V'Tochel Cheres, etc. So what exactly is this machlokus? So he said, maybe the machlokus is Mar Savar Maila b'simin ha'asulidaris k'miflagi. Mar Savar lo havi simin, Mar Savar havi simin. So again, this is something in which will be trampled on, whether it is a simin. So no, really the machlokus is b'simin haba me'elav k'miflagi. Whether or not a simin which comes potentially by itself, is that a simin or not? Tanakam says it's not. Rabbi Yehuda says it is a siman. So that is the second. And alternatively, we say maybe what is a machlokus? My love, mamidin al oichlin kemifagi. The mar sever mavirin, mar sever ein mavirin. So those are the three. Let me just see how he writes it. E siman asilidaris, siman habam elav. Okay. Question TB10 for the same price. Matzah ego sechacheres, kigo sechamois. Mahadin, so it's a machlokas. Umatam. So Hamishna oimrim shezes simin. Ava be'emez zetoli im oimrim sheyesh dugma sheyachol liyos bifni atzma blin nesinas adam v'oz zelo havi simin. Okay, so again, all I wrote was whether it's a simin haba me'elav. Okay, but again, there's potentially three answers to this question. Whether it's whether we say there's a siman asolidaris, whether again potentially you can say it's a siman haba me'elav is a machlokas, or whether we're mavirin al oichla. Okay, let's continue. Okay. Continue now on Chaf Gimel Mebez. So our Mishnah said, "Umachzari shel dogim." So you had all these fish connected. So Amai will have you kesher simin. So why isn't the fact that it's tied together should be a simin? So he answers, "Bekitra de sayada." We're talking about the catch of the fishermen. The koliyama hachi mekatri. This is how when they tie a knot, when they catch these fish, they always tie it in the exact same way. So that's not a siman. So they'll have you minion siman. How about the amount of fish? Maybe that should work. That they end up having the same amount of fish. Rashi says, "Kfar nahagu hasayadim lachrois keminyan hazeh." They always, when they string up all these fish, they always do it with the same amount. So therefore, there's no difference when it comes to that either. But havi minyan siman, so b'minyana deshavin. So b'mini Rav Sheshis minyan havi siman olo havi siman. Just in general, do we say that if you have a specific number, so it's counting a particular number, siman or not, to be able to say there was 8 of them, there was 30 of them, is that a siman? So I'm going to have Sheshis tenisu. We learned this. Matzakli Kesef found silver vessels, Nechleshus or copper, Gas Turoin Shel Avar. He found this type of kli, which is made out of lead. The whole meaning chol kli matachais, any metal hari zel yachser. The din is don't give it back. Ad sheyitin ois, until there's a sign. O ad shechavin mishkol oisav. The guy knows its weight. So the mishkol havi siman, mashma, the weight of the item alone is enough for to prove that's his. So then mido minyan nami havi siman, the size and the numbers also a siman. So therefore, if mishkol is a siman, so then mido and minyan should also be a siman. V'chaticha shel basar v'chulu. So again, if you just have all these pieces of meat, so ma'il havi mishkol a siman. Why do we say if you find a piece of meat that's undiscernible, how about its weight? So b'mishko the shavin, as we said before, it's like a standard weight. But to havi chaticha gufa siman, maybe the piece of meat itself, the way it's cut. O the dafka, o the atma. If we're dealing with dafka, the tzav, Rashi is the neck. Rashi says, quoting Rabbi Menachem Shemaiti, the dafka flanken, like the flanken, right? So maybe again it's a particular cut. Milatanya, we learn that matzah chatichos dog, and we found pieces of fish, the dog noshuch chayv hachros. So we see that there's this din that you would have to count when you would have to announce it because it is a siman. So the same thing maybe if you can identify that certain part of the meat. Chavya shel yain v'shel shemen v'shel tavua v'shel gargers. So you have these barrels of wine, oil, or grains, v'shel zeisim haril shelo, or of olives, so the din is you can keep it for yourself. So Hachmaiskinan b'di'ika simana b'paska. The reason why you would have to you would be able to keep it, rather you would have to announce it, that we said that the chatichas dog you have to announce, is that it has an unusual or unique shape, that the cuts are not the normal way. Ki hada rabba bar Huna mechatech le'tlasa karnasa. You can see this picture. He cut his meat into triangles. Dekanam detani domi the dog noshuch shmamina. It's comparable to this dog noshuch, which again is unusual in its cut and its shape. So it depends on how it is cut. That is a siman. But to say the meat is from the leg, for example, that is not a siman. Omer mar chavya shel yain v'shel shemen shel tvu v'shel gergus v'shel zeisim hario shelo. So if you find a barrel of wine or olive oil, you can keep it. But tanan kadiyan v'kadishem chayv hachros. We see elsewhere that you do have to announce it. So Rav Zera Amarav Masnisin Baroshum. What does that mean? It says Rashi, we're talking Chaviyoseihim Shel Cheres Hayu, that their barrels were made out of earthenware. V'gafen Oisam B'mugafas Cheres, and they were closed up in this closed up item of earthenware. Skipping a line. V'yemei Shvat O Nisan. They would sell these barrels to the store owners, 10 or 15 in a shot. So what do they do? Noitlin Meguftehem, says Rashi. They would remove the lids, but they would taste the wine, then they would close it up again. And they would put some type of a sealant around the cover. Bukari Roisham. So it was closed again with this clay seal. Umasnisin b'chavius reshuma v'hainu siman sheish roishman. So if it has this type of closing with a special clay seal, so then that in itself is the siman, and therefore that's the reason why you would have to announce. Mechal debraisa b'patuach. We're talking about where it's just open, and therefore, if that's the case. Iba b'tuach aveda madasi, says Rashi. Do aveda madasi shenicha p'tucha. You left it open. The whole shkatzim or masim and the chashim shaisim menu. You're gonna have bugs crawling in there. You're gonna have snakes shooting its venom in there. So of course it's pashut you would be able to keep it. Not sure what you're gonna do with it, but the reality is that it's hard to even understand that one's closed and one's open. Metzia. What does that mean? So Rashi says that they put the cover over it. Vlo sharkabatit. This didn't smear the clay, the closing agent. Siman leka v'aveda b'das nami leka. So it's not a siman, but it's not like an aveda madas that's completely like worthless, that the person's just totally making it like ownerless because snakes are climbing in there. No, there was a lid. But so therefore it was protected, but no siman was created. Okay. Even both cases, they could have a lid with the closing with a clay seal. So then the question, if that's the situation, then why would you say that you don't announce it? You should announce it. So there's a distinction. Lo kasha kan kaidim sheniflasu ha'itzaros kan le'achar sheniftachu ha'itzaros. Says Rashi, before the oitzaros, the storage houses, they were opened up. Shedain lo hagiya zman meicher hachaviyos. It was not yet the time of selling the barrels. V'yachad ba'almahu di'avid, only an individual was involved. Havi Roshim Simon. So then the Roshim will be a Simon, because if it's something which again is unique, that it's not done in the masses, so then it's more discernible. So Kihad Rabbi Yaakov Barabba Ashka Chavita Dacham, he found this barrel of wine, until after it was already opened up, which means at that point already everything was very readily available. Also, go and take for yourself. So Rav Bibi Rav Nachman Makam, fine. Makim Havi Simon, O Lo Havi Simon. This is what we discussed at the end of yesterday's daf. Is a location a simon? So Amalei Tenisu, we learned it. Matzah Chav Yashal Yan Vishal Shem Vishal Tibu Vishal Greg Vishal Zaysim Hario Shalo. When it comes to all these different barrels of wine, oil, and the like, you can keep it if you find it. Even if the item itself is not much of a simon, there is no simon, but you could say, okay, I found something in Baltimore. Then now you could tell me what I found there. So obviously it shows that makom is not a simon. So that's the question. So Barakta. What is Barakta Nahara, says Rashi. It was put on the edge of the river. So everyone leaves their barrels apparently in the exact same location, and therefore it's not considered to be a simon. So the only time makom is a simon if it's unusual, you leaving something there. However, if it's something in which is so common, so then if you say, oh yeah, I found something by the edge of the river, everyone's going to say it was a barrel, because they're going to know that's what everything is. They're always over there. So that's nothing unique. Amarav Mari, my time Amarabanan, Rakta the Nahara Loy Havi Simon. Why do we say it's not a simon by the river? The Amrin and Leki Heichi this Rami Ladidach is Rami Nami Lachavrach. So basically, just like you do it there, so do your friends, and therefore it's nothing unusual, and therefore it's not a simon. My time Amarabanan Makam Lo Havi Simon. Why not? Because the Amrin and Leki Heichi this Rami Ladidach Hai Makam is Rami Nami Lachavrach Hai Makam. So everyone has access to this place. So therefore, is it likely that maybe someone else left something there? Okay. Hahu Gavra, Diashkach Kufra Be Matsarta. So he found some pitch in this storage place. Also, made the Rab Armalei Zil Shkol Nashach. Take for yourself. Chazde Avika Machasem. We saw that he was hesitant. So Armalei Zil Ploig. So why don't you go split it up? So Lamika Sabramar Makom will have a simon. So it must be because you hold it's not a simon. So Ma'abo Mishum Yish Balam Noguba Dechazu Dekadchi Be Chilfe. It's actually the only reason why you could potentially keep it is because of Yish Bailam. And I saw that it was growing in the weeds, says Rashi. I know for sure that Balaam must have already given hope. Question 8. Tani Chadam Matzah Chav Yashal Yain Shel Shemen Haril Shalo. It says Chayv Hachros. So how do we answer this? Either one is Beroisham, right? There was this special sealant, and one is not, or they both have it. Kan kaidem shnifchatu hatzarais. It was before it was opened up. V'rishumo siman, because it was unique. Only one person was buying it, for example. However, alachar shnifchatu hatzarais, then rishumo siman. That's not going to really mean anything because, again, they all basically look quite similar. Okay, and there's so many all over the place. Okay, let's continue. He said, talking about anporia. So my anporia, so let's just get the entire language of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, according to Rav Shimon Eliezer, any kli which is anporia, you do not need to announce, because apparently it's no siman. So my anporia, new vessels, shul savasan ha'ayin, that therefore didn't allow a person to be able to really look at it so much, therefore it doesn't have a siman. If it does have a siman, what's the difference if a person stared at it alive? A siman should be enough, they have to announce it. Now, there's no siman, so you can stare at it all day. What's the difference? There's no siman on it. It has no siman, so then what's the whole difference? So nafkamina haduru with siman rabbanon. Do we need to return it to a young chacham? But tfias ein, because he has tfias ayin, he looks deeply into things. So savasan ayin kimle begavon umahadrinle. If we're dealing with something which is savasan ayin, something which is like a used item, so we should be confident that he probably knows about it, and therefore we should return it to him. Kilo savasan ayin, however, it's something which is not used because it's a new kli. He's not comfortable in knowing it's his for sure. Therefore, we don't give it back. There are three things in which the rabbis would deviate from the truth and b'malai with their words. B'maseches, u'v'puria, u'v'ushpiza. So what is this? So first of all, they can tell a little fib regarding Masechta. Says Rashi, Yesh b'yadcha Maseches Pliny Sidur Begirsa. Do you know how to learn it? Do you understand this particular sugya, olav? The Avgan is Sidur Hilo, even though he knows it, Yermalu Lav, Umidas Anavahi. You can say, I don't know it, even though you do know, because that's the sign of a great rabbi who doesn't brag. You're humble. The Torah makes you humble. Bepuria. So Rashi says, Shimashta mitascha. Did you actually have relations? So you say no, mitas sniasu. So again, they're modest. Now Taisus over here says, im shimish mitaso, im balkari hoya. Volo bola beis medrash, because the guy didn't go to shul. Vishalhu lomu ba. Why didn't she come to learn Torah? V'yomer shechoyl hoya. I'm sick. O shar oinis erlo. Inami shalushka shechavta almita zu lo yermelo kain penira bakari v'yizgana. So that's what it's referring to. And then the next one is Zubu Shpiza. So that's Bapuria. And some of Farshim actually see Bapuria is actually referring to Purim, right? About drinking on Purim. Okay. Bushpiza, we're having to do with guests. Top of Chaf Daled with Aleph. What is that referring to? Shaluhu al shpizu im kibu b'sever panim yafos. Were they nice to get the hosts? Yermalah mida toivahi kadeshlo yikbutz b'bani adam shenim huganim lebo tamid alav yachol es mamayno. So if they say, oh, is he a good host? No, he wasn't such a great host. Because if you say he was really great, then all of a sudden everyone's going to be bothering him. So you can, a Rabbanan are allowed to lie or be deceitful in these three matters. So my nafkamina, so Amar Zutchul Hadurile returning an object but tvias ayin. Because again, if this will determine whether this person is indeed a chacham, that you're able to return this item to him even though there was not a siman on it. If he only changes his language regarding these three things, because you can trust him. But if he deviates from other things, then we don't. Marzutram chasida igniv le casa de kaspa mishpiza. So unfortunately, there was this beautiful cup that was stolen, a silver cup. Chazil bar Beirav. They saw this guy, this rabbi. Demashi yad. He was washing his hands. V'nagiv beglim adachavre, and he was drying his hands on his friend's garment. Amar hainu hai. He's the thief. Do ivchasle amamayna adachavre. Doesn't care about his friend's money. Kafte beoidi. They grabbed hold of him, and Taka, he admitted to the fact that he stole. So the point is that a chacham is able to see things more than most. Okay, we'll stop there. And let's see, no more in question 8. TA 10. Matzah kli chadash ve'en bo siman himsar chachachriz. So this is us. Chav Gimel Amud Beis. So he says like this. Kishisav sa'ayin sarachachachris. V'shalosh savasin ein sarachachachris. So this sounds like with a chacham. Let's see. So this is what's referring to Kilam chadashim shalonas savasana ayin. So again, this is the answer. If there is a siman, then of course you always have to return it. If there is no siman, lochar, you should never have to return, even saviyasan ha'ayin. So he said, really delays bahu siman. And again, l'hadu et sim rabbanon, b'tviyas ha'ayin. I think that's probably all they're looking for. TA 10, possibly. Okay. TB 11, Adkan.